Episode 2, The Rules That Bite. Part 1. The second morning smelled like wet dust and floor polish, the kind that sits in your throat and makes you walk softer. Under the jacaranda, 4 glass bowls waited on a folding table. Gold, silver, sea, earth, and a sheet where new names queued in a column like a prayer list. A prefect with a straight name tag and a straighter spine ran the line like a bank teller. "Thumb," she said, holding out a bead that had the temperature of river stones. Her tag read, Lerato Maseko Moon. The bead leaned cool in Esona's palm, took a breath through her skin, and came up silver. Lerato threaded it on cord with a knot that refused to be pretty. "Moon," she said, satisfied. "Wear it low, not cute. If it warms, stop what you're doing and fetch a grown-up." "I thought there'd be drums," Esona said, then hated herself for saying drums like a tourist. "We have forms," Lerato said. "Forms are safer." The quad made the small, busy noises of a place that had chosen to be a place. To the left, Sun students took light like a dare, older and too relaxed, shoulders loose in a way that reads as permission. Beyond them, at the wall where Ivy kept secrets, a boy leaned one hip and watched nothing. Kwanda Zulu. Esona didn't mean to look. She looked. He didn't look back. That should have helped. It didn't. "Orientation," Headmistress Khumalo called from the steps. Plain jacket, plainer voice. Students pivoted on habit. Staff arranged themselves where exits like to think. "Houses are not costumes," Khumalo said. "They are jobs. Sun takes the last touch in a crisis. Moon keeps rhythm flat when trouble starts. Water pays small debts, pipes, hinges, milk. Earth keeps mouth shut, doors, drains, rails. If you don't like chores, you won't like surviving." A ripple of laughter. She let it fall and die. "3 sentences will keep you alive," she went on, writing them on a board that had seen better paint. 1. We do not sing inside. 2. We do not open to prove love. 3. Bells go on wrists, and if you don't understand yet, you will. Someone snorted. Thandi, Moon Senior with hands that knew how to press air flat, didn't look to see who. She just stood there until the snort learned manners. Timetables were handed out like fines. Esona's day stacked itself without romance. Foundational harmonies, room ethics, history of the houses, attack defense. She collected booklets with ugly covers and kept a seat near aisles because aisles are promises. Room ethics began before the bell finished being a bell. Thandi wrote in blunt chalk, "Not a mouth." Then beneath it, "Ear, not string." And under that, bells to wrists. "These are not slogans," she said. "They are rules. Rooms can act like mouths if you let them. Panels can act like strings if you flatter them. We use ears, not strings. We mark mouths so they remember their doors." She snapped a stick of chalk in half and gave Esona the bigger half. "Homework. Any drain lip you pass today, write it, big, ugly. If anyone complains, tell them to fetch me or a bucket." In history, a name with rust on it lay in the text. Sun Master Zulu. The paragraph was wrong in 2 directions. Traitor and cautionary tale. Like a rumor decided to be a syllabus. The teacher didn't defend the book. "You'll hear versions," she said. "The river remembers better than we do." She moved on before anyone had the courage to ask what the river thought. At lunch, the jacaranda shook off a few purple scraps like a careless ant. Esona sat under it with her tray between busi, earth, lime on her sleeve. Sifo. Water, milk on his knuckles, and Naledi. Moon, the reliable kind who knows where torches live. "You're with us," Naledi said, as if the decision had been written on a door the night before. Rule 1 of friends. If your bead warms, we get to be rude. "Rude how?" Esona asked. "Loud," Busi said. "Cheaper than possessed." Khumalo's voice cut through the quad again. Less loud this time, more final. Assembly at 15, she called. We will discuss pairing. Bring your beads. Bring your good sense. Groans, because teenagers don't like hearing about rules they intend to test. Rumor lifted its head and wagged its tail. Incompatible pairs, black glows, ridiculous consequences. Someone said the word tomato with an ugly giggle. Someone else shushed them in the way polite cowards shush. Ugh. Esona kept her eyes on the table and her ears on the campus. You can learn a place by the noises it refuses. The music block held its breath like a liar. The admin door pull shone a little too new. Somewhere, a vent tried a note and then thought better of it. Her bead cooled against her collarbone like a coin that didn't want to be spent. Show me your handwriting, Naledi said, sliding a notebook. We'll fix it before room ethics tests your patience. Esona wrote her name. The letters sat too straight, like guests in a house they didn't trust. Naledi nodded. Good, you'll like boring. Will I? Esona asked, because the part of her that had believed in bedtime monsters still wanted spectacle. You will, Sifo said, earnest without apology. Boring's how we win. That attack defense smelled of mats and the ghost of antiseptic. Naidu, gloves, welded shut face, set a row of posts down the gym and hung a tiny bell from each. You will run without charming the building, he said. If your power wants to show off, tell it no. If you ring a bell, stop, breathe, continue slower. We train continuity, not heroes. He clapped. The bells didn't. Esona took the line. First post, fine. Second, fine. Third, air changed. Not wind, the room's idea of wind. Her bead warmed, and the seam in the varnish ahead of her moved like a lip practicing a word. She nearly stopped, nearly tried to be impressive. Someone's low note, flat, rolled across the rafters like a tablecloth laid over a messy table. The seam forgot its ambition. The bell at the fourth post didn't ring. Finish, Naidu said, falling into her pace without being beside her. She finished. He taped the seam with the same care he'd use on a wound. You stop when it warms, he said. You fetch a moon. You don't invent. You, moon, nod to Thandi, sit with her the rest of the week. Small practice only. Thandi slid a piece of chalk into Esona's pocket like a spare key. Write first, she said. Talk later. In the corridor, Kwanda walked past with his hands tucked into pockets that treated him like a king. He stopped by a doorframe and leaned. The frame looked grateful. A girl ahead of Esona forgot to breathe, and then remembered in little sips. He didn't look at anyone. He didn't need to. Rumor walked ahead of him like a dog. Don't, Naledi said. Gentle, but made of brick. I'm not, Esona lied. By late afternoon, the sky had rolled dark towels over the ridge. Assembly gathered in the courtyard. Staff to edges, students in the square, a chalked ring near the steps just to remind the air who owned it. Beads clicked softly like teeth being counted. Boosie set her elbows out the way Earth kids do when they intend to stop a crowd from stepping on itself. Khumalo stepped up with a folder and not a single flourish. Pairs, she said. We will go over this calmly. There will be examples. There will be appointments. There will be consequences. There will be no singing. If the rain starts, we continue. If your bead warms, you step out. You do not test in storerooms. Someone tried to titter. The rain slapped the roof of the veranda once, hard. Everyone looked up, then at her, then at the ring. The building remembered to behave. Esona's pulse sat in the wrong place in her throat. Naledi's hand found her sleeve and pinched, just enough to borrow attention from fear. No story, Naledi whispered. Receipts. The headmistress opened her folder. The quad quieted the way a classroom quiets, when the person in the front has a list and the list has teeth. Esona touched the chalk in her pocket and found her breath again. In for 3, hold 2, out 4. Without knowing where she'd learned it. The bead at her collar stayed cool. The rain leaned closer to listen. Part 2, Rain stitched a soft fence around the quad. Khumalo opened her folder and made the day smaller in a good way. Pairing is not romance here, she said. It is load-bearing. When two of you choose each other, power moves. Sometimes you add, sometimes you subtract. Sometimes you knock something loose that was never meant to move. She held up 2 beads on a wire. Supervised checks only. She clicked them together. The glow went blue-white, clean, ordinary, the kind of light that forgets itself instantly. Add. A second click. The glow flared red, then settled to a sulk. Subtract. You will both feel slower. That is not a sin. It is a sign to keep your hands on your own homework. A third click. The wire drank the light and gave back black edged in sick green. Nobody laughed. Bad, Khumalo said, and the word had gravity. This is where consequences live. If you force a bond like this, the houses bite back. One or both of you may change, animal or object, until a safe window opens. Sometimes that is the next full moon. Sometimes it is an anomaly we can plan. Sometimes there is no safe window at all. A boy tried to whisper tomato and failed to make it funny. Khumalo heard him anyway. Yes, she said, not looking. A tomato is an object. If someone eats you, that is the end of your story. Do not test the rule to see if I'm being dramatic. She lifted her eyes to the seniors at the back. I will not chase you through storerooms. If you want to be together, you bring your beads to room 12 during the posted hours. A prefect will sit in the corner and look bored. If your glow is blue-white, we'll give you paperwork and rules about how to be useful together without setting the rafters on fire. If your glow is red, we'll tell you how to study without draining each other. If it is black, I will keep you apart until we can unfurl the damage in daylight with adults in the room. That is not cruelty. That is architecture. Thandi stepped forward with a tin of chalk. The only way this gets stupid is if you decide you are special, she said, voice even. Nobody is special under bad glow. If your bead warms before you even get to room 12, you stop where you are and fetch a grown-up. If one of you keeps walking, the other gets to be rude. She handed chalk down the rows. For the rest of the week, if a mouth looks likely to open, a drain, a vent, a polished pull, you write not a mouth, big, ugly. If you want to impress someone, bring them milk for a hinge. The rain deepened. The gutters thought about showing off and then remembered they were pipes. Esona found the chalk sitting light in her palm, and the bead at her collar cool, obedient coin. Questions arrived the way they always do, circling the real one. A moon girl asked if red could become blue-white, with effort. Sometimes, Khumalo said, mostly it becomes paperwork and mutual patience. If you want to try, you do it with us, not in a storeroom. A sun boy asked if blue-white couples could train together in attack defense. Yes, Naidu said from the steps. Under a schedule and with sun last. If your pairing turns your brains to porridge and you start hitting bells, you will find yourselves in my office learning to mop. A water aunt raised her hand from the parent's edge and asked the only question that mattered. What do we tell them when they say it's love? You tell them love pays in work, not drama, Khumalo said. You tell them we do not open to prove it. You tell them there will be time if there is a future, and there is no future if they turn into a tomato in a broom cupboard. The appointment board went up under the eaves. 2-hour blocks, 4 seats each, names written by a clerk with nice penmanship. Lorato pinned a second notice under it. No songs in buildings and appointment or go home, in the same blunt hand she used for posters. She did not look at Kwanda while she did it. He didn't make it about himself by moving. Pairs formed a line, hands awkward, beads clutched, the kind of brave that lives in flicking eyes. Thandi set a chair in the corner of room 12 and looked bored on purpose. The first couple clicked into blue-white and exhaled the way people exhale when they get permission to relax. The second showed a low red and nodded as if someone had just explained math. No one clapped. A prefect wrote times on a card and handed them the unromantic list about curfews and bell wrists. At the edge of the quad, Esona stood with Busi, Sifo, and Naledi and watched people make grown-up decisions with beads and posture. Kwanda drifted along the wall and paused under the fig tree like shade had hired him. Girls rearranged their faces in his general direction. He didn't smile. The restraint looked like arrogance until you remembered it might be policy. Is there ever a black that turns out to be a mistake? Esona asked, keeping her voice thin enough the air couldn't carry it far. Yes, Naledi said. The mistake is thinking you deserve an exception. Sifo bumped her shoulder with his quietly. We'll be rude for you if you need it, he said. Elbows out. Movement near the art block door tugged Esona's attention. Two seniors, heads close, the body language of people planning to be special. She didn't try to hear. The building did it for her. When they thought they were alone in the corridor, their words fell into the corner the way bad plans do. Storeroom, the boy said. After prep, the girl said. 17:30. My bead won't shut up, he said, half laugh, half dare. Mine too, she said, half smile, half dare. The rain hid their faces, but the shapes were enough. Sun shoulders, water hair, stupid courage. Esona looked at Naledi. Naledi already had the chalk tin in her hand like a person reaching for oven mitts. We'll walk that wing after prep, she said, just in case the world is exactly as predictable as it looks. Do we tell someone now? Esona asked. We tell someone when, Busi said. We're not the story. We're the people who show up with chalk and milk and a chair. The appointment line thinned. The board filled with room 12 times. A poster appeared over the art block hallway that hadn't been there an hour ago. Not a mouth. Letters thick enough to survive weather. Lerado's corner was square, of course. She stepped back, eyed it, and tapped the tape lips on the door to make them uglier. Khumalo closed her folder and made the day ordinary again. Fetch your supper, she said. Then your homework, then sleep. If your bead warms, you stop and fetch me or anyone wearing a key on their belt. Do not be special. People broke into their smaller shapes, friend groups and grudges and politeness. Esona followed her crew past the hose cupboard. She wrote not a mouth on its edge because the letters from this morning had blurred under fingers. It felt like washing a cup. You don't thank a cup for not turning into a throat. You scrub it and set it down for tomorrow. Behind them, under the fig, Kwanda turned his head just enough to watch the art block hallway settle. He didn't follow the seniors. He didn't warn them either. He leaned on the stone and looked like a man letting a wall rest against him. 17:30, Naledi said again, mostly to the chalk in her hand. We'll be there at 17:20 with a ring ready and milk in our pockets. Esona nodded. The bead at her collar stayed cool. The rain softened. The gutters behaved. The campus looked ordinary on purpose. That is always when people try to make a scene. Part 3. Prep ended under a shy sun. The puddles were tired of reflecting and the gutters had stopped trying to be clever. At 17:20, Naledi led the three of them toward the art block like a person taking soup to a neighbor. No drama, just purpose. Esona palmed the chalk Thandi had slipped her. Busi carried the milk jar like it was a baby with opinions. The corridor smelled of varnish and wet paper. Posters curled at their corners, the kind of mess that invites ideas. Lerado's not a mouth sign over the hallway looked newer than its neighbors and therefore lonelier. Esona touched the corner to check it was real. It was. They set their boring on the floor where it counts. Naledi chalked a ring across the storeroom threshold in one wide, ugly sweep. Busi dabbed milk on the hinges, rubbing it into metal like balm. Sifo stood back, elbows out, jaw set in that water way that says, you may pass me by turning into fog. Otherwise, no. Footsteps came light and laughing. Langa and Mbali rounded the corner with the body language of people who think rules are a dare. Sun shoulders, water hair. He had the adventurer grin on. She wore the I know better smile. They both looked at the ring and then at the faces attached to it. "You can book room 12, Naledi said, gentle like a warning sign. "It has chairs." "We're not children," Langa said, which is a sentence children love. Mbali's bead glinted under her collar, and Esona didn't like the way it looked. Too awake. "Let us through," Mbali said, like a person testing a fence panel with her finger. "We will," Busi said. "Tomorrow." Langa rolled his shoulders and stepped anyway, because sun boys sometimes learn physics late. His toe kissed chalk. The ring took it personally. He stopped as if a hand had caught his shin. "What is this?" he asked, insulted. "Insurance," Naledi said. "Mbali, look at me, not him. If your bead warms, you turn around and go home." Mbali did not look at Naledi. She looked at Langa the way people look at cliff edges and then step closer to feel brave. "It's just a quick touch," she said. "We already know." "Then prove it in room 12, Saifo said. His voice was kind and heavy. "If it's blue-white, you'll be out of there in 10 minutes with a permission slip. If it's not, you'll be out of here alive." Langa reached out fast, the way cowards do commitment, before help can arrive. Mbali lifted her bead like a match. Kwanda's shadow slid along the far wall then, uninvited but not unwelcome, and came to rest by the fire extinguisher. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The corridor felt it. Sun had arrived last, not first. "Don't," Naledi said. They did. The beads kissed. The glow went black with a thin, sick green at the edges that felt wrong in Esona's mouth, like biting foil. The air took a breath. The building leaned in. It happened fast enough to be kindness. Mbali came apart into color and fur, a spill of calico that hit the drop cloth without dignity. The cat skittered toward the gap under the door and met chalk like a window meets a bird. It bounced and hissed, all pupils and panic. Langa staggered as if a laugh had been kicked out of him. He grabbed the doorframe with both hands, fingers whitening, trying to make wood into permission. "No singing," Naledi said to the air, even though no one had tried. Her palm flattened, and the flat went out level with the tops of chairs, ironing the hum out of the vent and the vanity out of the floorboards. Busi got down, elbows out, and pushed the drop cloth back under the cat with the careful cruelty of a nurse setting a bone. And Khumalo appeared as if the corridor had remembered to produce her. She wore the jacket she wears when meetings don't end on time. "We have work," she said, which is the most comforting sentence at school. "Keep the ring. Milk the screws. No second touches." Saifo smeared milk along the hinge heads until they shone wet and humble. Esona wrote not a mouth on the doorsill, even though it already said it. The second line made the letters look rude enough to be effective. Her hand shook only at the end, and she put the wobble into the underline where it couldn't start trouble. "Hands where the room can count them," Khumalo told Langa, and he put them on his head like a man being arrested by physics. His bead flickered again, felt like a cough in the air, and then steadied to nothing. The cat tried the ring twice more. Both times it hit the chalk and slid back, offended. On the second try, it froze, small and bright and furious, and let the room consider its next sarcasm. "We're not taking her out of the ring," Khumalo said, answering the thought none of them had been foolish enough to speak. "We wait for a safe window. Moon, what do you call the next one?" Naledi checked the light under the ceiling in the bowl of rain at the edge of the quad, and whatever else moons check that isn't written on any timetable. "An hour," she said. "Maybe less. The moon's moving enough for an apology, not enough for grace. We can make do with apology." "Chairs," Khumalo said. "We sit with our mistakes." Busi fetched 2 from a classroom. They set them just outside the ring because furniture tells pride where to go. Esona sat, chalk still in her hand, because putting it away felt like tempting fate. Kwanda stayed where he was, a palm on the extinguisher cabinet frame. one touch, presence without weight. He didn't spend another. The corridor breathed like a person who had just remembered their own name. "Tell me the rule," Khumalo said, not looking at Langa, looking at the ceiling as if the ceiling might try something. "We don't open to prove love," Langa said, voice low and peeled. It sounded borrowed. He looked at the cat and then at his hands and swallowed a sentence he didn't deserve to say. "Good," she said. "Now tell me the other one." "No singing in buildings," he said. "Good," she said. "And the third." "Bells to wrists," he said, and his mouth twisted like it hurt to be this obedient. The corridor held. The cat crouched and panted and glared at a world that had stopped being poetic on purpose. Esona breathed in for 3, hold for 2, out for 4, not to manage power, just to manage fear. The chalk didn't get lighter. It didn't need to. Down the hall, Thandi arrived and leaned her shoulder into the air, widening the flat the way some people open a window. "We'll be here a while," she said. "Good. Practice sitting." The minutes learned to pass like adults. Langa's hands stayed where the room could count them. The cat twitched, then tucked its paws and pretended to be a loaf out of spite. The ring held, not because chalk is strong, but because habits are. When the apology in the sky finally reached the corridor, it was small. You could miss it if you liked drama. The calico stretched in a way that didn't belong to cats and let go of being impossible. Mbali came back on the drop cloth with paint on her mouth and the kind of sob people don't forgive themselves for. She rolled to her side and stared at the ring she was still inside of and didn't try to leave. Khumalo didn't offer comfort. She offered work. "Good," she said, as if someone had fit a beam back into a wall. "Stay there. Breathe. We will talk when you can hear me without borrowing a story." Esona's legs tingled with pins. She stood carefully. Her bead stayed cool. The letters on the sill looked rude enough to keep working overnight. Kwanda took his hand off the extinguisher frame at last and looked at the chalk ring the way men look at a tool they respect. He glanced once toward Esona without blinking long enough to make it a thing, then walked away before anyone could imagine they'd caught him at something. "Tomorrow," Khumalo said to Langa and Mbali, "you will come to my office and pay in boring. For now, you will sit in a place where the room can see your hands." Naledi drew a second ring 2 steps back from the first because some rules like partners. Busi set a coin of milk on each hinge again because kindness done twice is still kindness. Saifo took the first chair shift with the patience of a stone warmed by sun. Esona wrote "not a mouth" on the poster board tacked to the wall just because her fingers needed to finish the sentence somewhere no one would trip. The chalk squeaked. The squeak sounded like a hinge that had agreed to behave. "Go eat," Thandi told her quietly. "Bring food back for the watchers. Don't tell the story. Tell the receipts." Esona nodded and memorized the taste of the corridor in her mouth. Chalk, milk, varnish, rain, and the way it felt to have caught disaster at the ankles and persuaded it to sit. She didn't feel powerful. She felt useful. It was better. Part 4. Morning put a clean edge on everything and made last night look like a lesson instead of a scandal. The board and the quad carried receipts in Khumalo's tight hand. Incident, unsupervised pairing attempt, art block 1730. Outcome, 1 temporary animal change, no injuries, no songs, no openings. Corrections, Langa Mbali. 2 months work detail, door lips, drain grids, poster straightening. Room ethics X 2 weekly. Pairing ban pending review. Bells to wrists for 14 days. Yao, thanks to Naledi. Ring flat. Busi, hinges milk. Saifo, guard. Thandi, flat. Esona marking, prefects posters. No speeches, just the list. People read, adjusted their faces, and went on with the jobs that keep a place a place. Mbali and Langa sat on 2 chairs outside admin with their hands visible, not as punishment, as furniture. Lerato arrived with a crate, chalk, tape, ugly lipstock, a level. "You work with me," she told them. "We will fix things you made worse in your heads." Esona and her crew took the chapel ramp first. Fresh not a mouth, where the early crowd had rubbed the letters thin. Sifo paid the hinge in milk. Busi rubbed it in with 2 fingers. Naledi checked the corner seams with the kind of patience that makes rooms honest. "Auntie?" "Eat, then attack defense," Naledi said. Instructors posted an assessment. "All ready?" Esona asked. "You want to fail in public while the day is kind," Busi said. The gym smelled like mats and plan. Naidu had set the room in lanes with bright chalk and small bells. The board said assessment 1. Anchor deflect. Under it, the reminders. No second touches, sun last, stop when bead warms. "You will do this in pairs," Naidu said. "One of you anchors the lane. One of you throws a thread at the pad. Threads are not songs. Anchors are not heroics. If the building takes interest, you stop and I get grumpy." Pairs formed. Busi anchored first. She is made for it. Esona stood behind the line with a beanbag-sized pad and threw the softest thread she had. A light push of attention, meant to test, not taunt. Busi caught it on the pad and let it die there. The bell at their lane didn't twitch. Good. They swapped. Esona took the anchor pad. The job has a shape. Feet steady, elbows not locked, breath 3-2-4, jaw cheap, eyes on hands, not faces. Sifo threw a neat little line of pressure. Esona let it land and go slack. The building watched and got bored. That is the goal. Next, Naidu called. Karabo Mithembu. Son, 1 year older, fond of spectacle, took the lane beside them with his partner, a jittery earth girl trying to look calm. Karabo glanced over at Esona and smiled without kindness. "Storeroom medium," he said, as if it were banter. "Show us that trick again." Esona kept her eyes on the pad. "We're doing the assessment," she said. "That's what I said," he replied, and threw too fast for his partner's anchor. The thread slapped the pad and ricocheted into the lane divider. The bell chimed once, small but happy. "Stop," Naidu said even. "Reset." Karabo rolled his shoulders. His bead brightened, the way sunbeads do when their owners forget about rooms and remember about crowds. He did it again. Harder. The bell sang once more, higher this time. The practice vent over lane 3 perked up, curious. "Flat," Naidu said, and the air obeyed him because he is a man who has made flat a habit, not a spell. The vent forgot itself. Esona shifted back to anchor. Karabo's eyes stayed on her, not his work. "Come on, Moon," he said. "You're the one who almost opened the gym yesterday." "I didn't," she said. "Almost," he said, delighted with the word almost. He threw across the divider. Technically illegal, actually dangerous. The line kissed the edge of Esona's pad, tried to run up her arm as if her elbow were a ladder. Her bead warmed. Under the rafters, a seam in the paint remembered it exists. Esona did not think. She shoved back. Too much, too fast. The push landed on Karabo's pad and then jumped, stupid electricity, into the little metal bracket that holds the lane bell. The bell rang sharp once. The practice vent rattled. The gym took a breath. "I said stop," Naidu said, already moving. Thandi, who had been auditing the assessment from the bleachers, put her palm out and spread flat across the rafters like a tarpaulin. The vent lost its enthusiasm. The seam in the paint swallowed. The bell rocked itself quiet. Esona had both hands white-knuckled on the pad, breath high and wrong. She looked at Karabo's face, surprised, then pleased, and wanted to shame him with competence. That is how people pay the wrong bill. "Drop the pad," Naidu said, standing between lanes now, voice so calm it took choices out of the room. "Hands where the building can count them." She dropped it. He turned to Karabo. "You throw inside your lane and at the right speed," he said. "This is not a stage. It is a class." Karabo tried to laugh. It sounded like a fork on a plate in a quiet house. He picked up his pad, mouth flat. Naidu faced Esona again. You breathe, he said. You apologize to the room before you apologize to people. Sorry, she said. To the air, to the brackets, to the paint seam, to the bell, to the pad, for making a story where a drill should have been. Better, he said. Bench, 3 sets of slow breaths. Watch 3 pairs do it right. She sat. Thandi came down the steps and leaned against the wall near her shoulder, not touching. What did your bead do? Thandi asked. Warmed, Esona said. She stopped herself from saying, provoked like it was a defense. Nay. And what did you do when it warmed? Pushed, she said. She swallowed that word again. Too hard. What's the line on the board? Thandi asked. Stop when it warms, Esona said. Good, Thandi said. Next time, obey the ink, not the boy. Across the gym, someone else made the right mistake, the small one that doesn't teach the wrong lesson, and Naidu praised it without smiling. Good stop, he called. Your ears work. On the next rotation, Esona took the lane again with Busi. They kept it small. They did not perform. The bell stayed bored. Karabo, shamed but not broken, stayed within his lane. His partner's hand stopped shaking. By the last whistle, the rafters looked interested in nothing at all. In the hall, as people unstrapped bells and wiped mats, the story tried to grow legs. She blasted him, someone said. Did you see his face? Karabo's a chop, someone else added, thrilled. She shut him up. Naledi turned, level with her voice as with her posters. No, she said. She made it loud, and then she did the right thing. The right thing is the only part you repeat. Esona kept quiet. The heat in her hands had settled. The embarrassment was useful. It would keep her honest better than praise. On the way out, she wrote, not a mouth on the little screw cover at the gym door, because it had a shine someone would be tempted by. She did it quickly and moved on. Ugly saves. Fois. Khumalo flagged her near the quad. 2 minutes, the headmistress said, walking without stopping, so Esona had to keep up. Yes, ma'am. You lost your temper small, Khumalo said. Good that it was small. Learn from it while it's cheap. I will. If a son boy baits you, Khumalo added, call a son to handle him. That is why we have houses. That is how son last works. Esona glanced, involuntary, toward the far wall. Kwanda was there, talking to Naidu about nothing that needed talking about. He did not look over. She put her eyes back where they belonged. Yes, ma'am, she said. Good, Khumalo said. Take your crew. Walk a loop. If anything tries to be interesting, make it boring, then eat. They walked. Admin pull. Chalked and already rude from this morning. Jose cupboard, letters intact. Chapel ramp, milk tacky, hinge content, music block, Lerato inside, taping a felt sleeve into a vent, face set in the way of a person rewriting her own bad taste in physics. Lerato gave them a nod. A small one, the kind you give to people who supported a corridor without turning it into a poem. At supper, Langa and Mbali ate at a side table and did not talk loud. The chair legs scraped politely. Lerato came in late, hands inked and taped, and sat with them like a supervisor who also likes her job. Karabo arrived with his shoulders down and kept them down. The building, which is a better judge than any of them, decided to trust the evening. Back in residence, Esona copied the day's list into the front of room ethics, so it would be first the next time she opened it. Stop when it warms. Obey ink, not boys. Apologize to the room first. No second touches. Sun last. Witness small. The ugly saves. She underlined obey ink twice, hard enough to dent the page. On impulse, she added one more, small, in the margin where only she would see it. Don't look at him unless you mean it. The rain had gone. The gutters made their honest fridge noise. Somewhere on campus, a prefect rewrote, Not a mouth on a sill without being asked. Esona lay on her back and breathed 3-2-4 until the room remembered to be a room and her hands remembered to be hands. Part 5. By midweek, the campus had learned Esona's face in that way places learn people they might need. Prefects began sending her to fetch chalk, to carry milk, to stand in doorways while a room remembered its job. It wasn't glory. It was errands with teeth. After first block, Khumalo waved her into admin without pausing her walk. The office smelled like paper and floor polish. The tall cupboard under the fan wore a strip of tape with the unromantic label, Ledger. "Read," Khumalo said, tapping the bound book open to yesterday's page. The entries were dull and beautiful. 1730 Art Block Corridor attempted unsupervised pairing ring /flat/milk. One temporary animal change, no songs. No openings watch seated. 2 hours consequence posted 7 o'clock R. Khumalo. "Writing like this is work," Khumalo said. "It stops the mouth that lives in rumor. We file receipts. We don't collect stories." She pushed a blank incident form across the desk. "Carry 1. If something small happens near you, write it exactly and hand it in after supper. If something big happens, you fetch me first and write later." "Why me?" Esona asked before sense could stop her. Because you have a medium's hands and a clerk's mouth," Khumalo said, as if reading a timetable. "That combination keeps schools alive. Also, Thandi says you listen to rooms like they're colleagues. That helps." Esona slid the form into the back of her room ethics booklet. It felt heavier than paper should. Then, on the quad, the world continued being sensible. Mbali and Langa pushed a trolley stacked with ugly aluminum lips. Larato walked behind them with a level like a judge. When an Earth boy offered to carry the crate, Larato said no in a tone that filed the word under necessary, not unkind. She had a smear of adhesive on her right index finger that the sink hadn't conquered. She kept her hand out where the room could count it. Esona noticed because Esona notices that kind of thing now. She didn't turn noticing into a story. In history, the bad textbook's paragraph on Sunmaster Zulu annoyed everyone for different reasons. The teacher, sensible as dry bread, let them list the versions on the board. Traitor, textbook. Guardian who failed, town rumor. Man who laughed at rules. Sun legend whispered with a grin. Man who swallowed storm. Water aunties, softer voices. She didn't bless any of them. "Write all 4, she said. "We'll see more when we earn more." In room ethics, Thandi changed nothing and thereby taught the only lesson anyone needs. Repetition. Chalk again. Milk again. Flat again. "We do not invent," she said, sending pairs down the arcades with sticks of chalk in a bucket and a milk jar each. "We tend." They tended. At the hose cupboard, Esona retraced not a mouth, where 100 hands had blurred it. At the chapel ramp, Sifo paid the hinge with a coin of milk and rubbed it in like ointment. At the admin pull, Boosie found a shine someone had left and scuffed it with the heel of her palm until it looked like something no one would admire. "Ugly saves," Boosie said, satisfied. They rounded the music block. Inside, Larato was installing a felt sleeve over a vent with a neatness that would have impressed a spiteful god. She didn't look up. She didn't hum. She wrote ear, not string on the inside of the vent cover with a marker before she put it back, because sometimes you leave notes where temptation lives. Between blocks 2 and 3, a first year from water flagged them down by the laundry where steam made the ceiling think it was weather. "It whistles," he said, pointing at the grid over the dryer vents with the solemnity of a witness. Naledi made a ring with chalk so ugly the grid blushed. The whistle faltered. Sifo took the milk and paid the screw heads like he was tipping the staff that holds gravity in. Esona, mouth small, voice smaller, said the sentence that makes rooms behave. Not a mouth. The steam forgot to have opinions and turned back into air that does its job. She wrote the incident on the form in 3 plain lines. Laundry vent grid beginning whistle chalk ring milk screws stopped. 10:12. She didn't add adjectives. She didn't deserve them. At lunch, Karabo walked past and did the thing clever boys do after being corrected. He pretended not to see the person who'd seen him. It landed somewhere between apology and challenge. Esona chose to let the air eat it. She stacked bowls at the return hatch and left. On the way to attack defense, they passed the admin door again. The pull had been polished twice today by some idiot's itch. The tamper tape Naidu had put on the screw heads now wore the smallest smear of blur along a single line. Right index finger height. Naledi steadied the tape with one hand and wrote, "Not a mouth," on the paint just above the panel with the other. Esona felt the thought try to be a story. Who keeps polishing? Why? And gave it a desk to sit at instead. We had a poster. She fetched a sheet from Larato's crate and a roll of tape. "Corner square," Larato said automatically, passing them in the corridor with her level, hands stained from working vents. Naledi squared the corner until square was undeniable. Larato's right index, still faintly sticky, hovered in the air like a confession she intended to make to herself later. Privately, by fixing 3 other things, uglier. Naidu ran attack defense as if yesterday hadn't happened, which was mercy disguised as discipline. "Same assessment," he said. "Do it better because that is what repetition is for." Karabo stayed in his lane. Esona obeyed the ink. Bells got bored. After, Khumalo pinned a fresh notice to the board where eyes live. Pairing tests. Room 12 only and, underneath, no exceptions. The appointment slots were already packed with names, some written in hopeful loops, some in cramped, anxious letters. The corridor past room 12 smelled like chalk, not perfume. Hence, dusk tilted the quad gray and friendly. On the path to residence, Busi tugged Esona's sleeve and nodded toward the low brick on the fence line where everyone pretends not to see the small country that lives there. "Crumbs?" Busi asked, almost shy. Esona had a heel of bread wrapped in a serviette. She'd half planned to eat it in bed. She set it on the brick. Something the size of a child's mistake blinked from the thorn bush and took it. 3 small pebbles appeared where the bread had been. Payment, or joke, or both. "Don't greet," Sifo murmured. "Just don't be rude." Esona didn't greet. She did put 1 pebble in her pocket because she is a person who keeps receipts. In the corridor before lights out, Thandi handed her a folded card. "Witness trainee," it said at the top in neat print. Below, "Keep plain notes. Don't fix your sentences. Fix the room. Bring ledger slips to admin after supper." Someone had drawn a little box next to each line. The boxes were empty, unabashed. Esona ran her thumb over the word trainee and felt something tidy settle under her ribs. Night hummed the honest hum of refrigerators and old pipes and tired teenagers. Near midnight, the room tried to remember it might once have been important. Esona woke to a pressure at the corners where paint meets ceiling. A question without words. She did the thing that's beginning to be hers. In for 3, hold for 2, out for 4. She didn't throw anything. She didn't fetch a song. She put her hand on the edge of the desk and felt wood be wood. The question backed away like a stray dog who'd found a closed gate. Esona lay there and let her breath be policy until it was boring again. Then, because she is trying to deserve her small title, she got up, took her chalk, and wrote "not a mouth" on the inside lip of her window frame where only morning would see it. Ugly, effective. Nobody's story. She slept. In the morning, she took her form to admin, wrote her name at the bottom without making it about herself, and slid it into the ledger's sleeve. The book accepted it the way doors accept keys, without compliment, with relief. Khumalo nodded once and made a tick that meant "we keep you." "What do I do if someone asks me to narrate?" Esona asked, surprising herself with her own fear. She meant the girls who wanted a scene, the boys who wanted to hear their names in other people's mouths, the aunties who needed details to believe in safety. "You don't," Khumalo said. You show them the list. She tapped the page on the board where yesterday sat in orderly lines. We're building a place. Places don't run on adjectives. Outside, Langa and Mbali were measuring a door for a new lip while Lerato held the level and refused to be impressed by any apology, except straight corners. Karabo lugged panels for Naidu without jokes. Kwanda leaned on a wall and watched a hinge accept milk as if that were his favorite kind of television. He glanced at Esona once, exactly once, and then looked past her at the poster above the admin pole, squared, blunt, corrected. She didn't look back. She remembered what she had written in her book. Obey ink, not boys. Don't look at him unless you mean it. She walked to class with chalk under her fingernail and the pebble in her pocket, knocking quietly against her thigh like a polite reminder. Somewhere behind her, a drain whispered a note, and someone who wasn't her wrote not a mouth across it before she could turn. That's how you know a rule is turning into furniture. You do not have to be in the room for the room to remember. Part 6. Room 12 smelled like chalk and old varnish. A clerk's table faced a pair of plastic chairs, and a third chair sat in the corner for whoever had to look bored. Thandi put Esona there with a notebook and a pen that didn't want to smudge. Witness trainee sits where the room can see you, Thandi said. You don't advise. You don't react. You log glow and outcome. If anything warms wrong, you fetch me or any key on a belt. If it goes black, you hold the door with your eyes and your elbows until sun comes. Aye. The first couple were already holding hands like they were apologizing to each other for being nervous. Thandi took their beads, clicked them together, and watched without blinking. Blue-white. The light came and went like good manners. Add, Thandi said. She handed them a card with rules printed in a dull font. Bell wrists for practice, off ground for singing, curfews, where not to stand during storms. They looked relieved to be given chores instead of permission. Esona wrote the line the way Khumalo would have wanted. 1407 pair a blue-white ad issued card. Advised Andy schedule no incident. The second couple were fast talkers. One bead was moon, one water. They clicked and got red, low and steady like a warning light on a panel. The boy's shoulders slumped. The girl looked like someone had told her tea would be late. Subtract, Thandi said. Not a punishment, a plan. She sketched the plan without drama. Staggered study hours, separate AAND lanes. If they insist on dating, fine, but they keep their hands light around each other for a month and let staff watch for drift. They both nodded like accountants. That's 1418 pair B. B read. Low subtract issued schedule. Warned on drift, no incident, Esona wrote. The door clicked once without hands. Not a mouth, just a loose latch. Esona noted it and didn't let her gaze feed it. Boring keeps doors faithful. Then came the test people tell stories about too loudly. Two seniors who should have known better. Beads almost touching before they sat. A hum in the boy's throat he probably thought was manly. Thandi held out her palm and simply said, Stop. They didn't. They brought the beads together fast. The light went black with a green edge that felt like chewing foil. The room took a breath. Esona did what she'd been told to do. She didn't stand. She didn't gasp. She slid her chair 1 inch so the door had a person at it and put her elbows out. She said nothing. Silence is policy. Thandi didn't reach for a second touch. She reached for the corridor with her voice. Son? She called, even as if asking for a spanner. A hand landed on the doorframe from the hall. One touch. Kwanda. He didn't come in. He didn't take anyone's place. He stood where Son stands and let the room count him. The black edge went from hungry to embarrassed. Out, Thandi said to the pair, same tone she'd used to move chairs. They moved, slow and obedient, as if gravity had returned to the building. Kwanda took his palm off the frame before anyone could spend that fact on a story. He didn't look at Esona. He didn't look at anyone. He went back to the wall. Vroom. Appointments only, Thandi told the seniors in the corridor, voice still even. You'll come back when your heads are quiet. They didn't argue. They found the hallway very interesting. 1433 pair Black Edge Green, halted by staff, no change escorted out, barred pending review. Sun present door frame, no second touches. No song, no opening, Esona wrote, careful with the order and the facts. They ran 2 more checks, both blue-white, and closed the book on the hour. Thandi took Esona's page, scanned it, and nodded like a person who enjoys correct nouns. You sit like furniture, she said. That's a compliment. Outside, the corridor had the tired look of a room that had been tempted and had chosen not to be dramatic. Naledi had chalked not a mouth across the threshold, even though everyone knew. Sifo had set a coin of milk on the hinge and rubbed it in until it looked like a small, clean lie. Busi had put a chair just outside the door and left it there. People step better when chairs explain corridors. Errands, Lerato said, passing with her level and a roll of tape. Admin pull, art vents, chapel gate. The list clipped onto Esona's day like a carabiner. They did the rounds. Admin pull had a new shine. Naledi wrote not a mouth above it again, and squared the poster corner until the world stopped being silly. Art vents took felt sleeves without complaint. The chapel gate hinge drank its milk and stopped rehearsing being important. At laundry, the steam kept its arrogance to itself, because someone had written the rule where steam could read it. Ticked. On the quad, the board carried the only update anyone needed. Pairing tests, room 12. No exceptions. Underneath, in Khumalo's hand, a line that made parents sigh with relief. Consequences are boring. People read it and accepted the day. In attack defense, Naidu had them run the anchor lanes 1 more time. You're not training for applause, he said. You're training to keep your friends. Karabo stayed in his lane, eyes on his partner's hands. Esona kept her breath on a leash and did not invent. Bells were bored enough to yawn. At supper, Mbali and Langa ate with Lerato and a bucket of screws. They measured a door and argued about lips and corners and the dignity of ugly. It sounded like learning. Karabo fetched a new stack of mats without waiting for Naidu to ask. That sounded like learning too. Later, as light settled on the brick and the jacaranda shook out 2 more purple scraps, Khumalo stopped Esona near the hose cupboard. Ledger slip? She asked. Esona handed over the page. Khumalo read it once, tapped the margin where the timestamps lined up, and made a small tick that meant filed. What did you learn that isn't on the paper? She asked. Not a test, a habit. That boring is faster, Esona said. And that sun last means everyone else stops wanting to be first. Good, Khumalo said. Keep that sentence where you keep your chalk. They walked the evening loop because evenings forgive fewer mistakes. Hinge milk. Chalk where fingers had smudged. Felt where vents had ideas. Posters straightened. Not a mouth redrawn on a sill where someone had tried to polish courage into permission. None of it was impressive. All of it counted. Back in residence, Esona slid the pebble from her pocket onto her desk and put the chalk beside it. She copied today's lines into the front of room ethics and added 1 more rule in small letters. Be a chair when rooms want an audience. When the building tried its late thought at the corner of the ceiling, she didn't answer. In for 3, hold 2, out 4. The thought left without becoming a sentence. She slept like people sleep when they've earned a dull day. Somewhere down the hall, a girl whispered, not a mouth to her window, and then forgot she had whispered. That's what you want. Rules that keep working after you stop saying them. In the morning, the bead at Esona's collar was cool. The board was neat. The quad smelled like wet chalk and tea, and the day looked like a thing that would stay put if everyone did their job. That's how episode 2 closes. Not with spectacle. With a campus that likes being a campus, a witness trainee who likes being useful, and a sun boy who doesn't look at her because the room didn't ask him to. The story will get louder later. For now, ugly saves, sun last, witness small, no opening to prove love. The building remembers, so will we.